Anyway, and speaking of the Patriot Act, as some are trying to take parts out of it, of course, I think 4 or 5 different sections of the Patriot Act are to expire on December 31st of this year under the sunset provisions. Others are trying to expand the administrative subpoena provisions. And for those of you who don't speak lawyerese, administrative subpoena means one cop asks another cop, hey, can I have a warrant? And the other cop says, yeah, sure. And there you go. See, so that's cutting out the judge, as is required in the 4th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which I'm sure you all know by heart, says that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects shall not be violated, and unreasonable searches and seizures, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized, and so on like that. So, anyway, in direct violation of the 4th Amendment, the Patriot Act already exists and now is to be updated. And it's sad news. Now, listen, I got to talk about Uzbekistan real quick. No, in fact, you know what? I'm going to put off Uzbekistan. I want to go ahead and play this clip of Galloway. Paying attention in there, Matt? Get it all queued up for me, bud? There's this guy, Galloway. Tell me, when was the last time you heard any American, politician or town hall meeting or otherwise, address the United States Senate in this manner? This is just absolutely heroic.
Is a proven fact. It's a proven fact that these forged documents existed and were being circulated amongst right-wing newspapers in Baghdad and around the world in the immediate aftermath of the fall of the Iraqi regime. Now, Senator, I gave my heart and soul to oppose the policy that you promoted. I gave my political life's blood to try to stop the mass killing of Iraqis by the sanctions on Iraq, which killed 1 million Iraqis, most of them children. Most of them died before they even knew that they were Iraqis, but they died for no other reason other than that they were Iraqis, with the misfortune to be born at that time. I gave my heart and soul to stop you committing the disaster that you did commit in invading Iraq. And I told the world that your case for the war was a pack of lies. I told the world that Iraq, contrary to your claims, did not have weapons of mass destruction. I told the world, contrary to your claims, that Iraq had no connection to Al-Qaeda. I told the world, contrary to your claims, that Iraq had no connection to the atrocity on 9/11/2001. I told the world, contrary to your claims, that the Iraqi people would resist a British and American invasion of their country, and that the fall of Baghdad would not be the beginning of the end, but merely the end of the beginning. Senator, in everything I said about Iraq, I turned out to be right, and you turned out to be wrong. And 100,000 people have paid with their lives. 1,600 of them American soldiers, sent to their deaths on a pack of lies. 15,000 of them wounded, many of them disabled forever on a pack of lies. If the world had listened to Kofi Annan, whose dismissal you demanded, if the world had listened to President Chirac, who you want to paint as some kind of corrupt traitor, if the world had listened to me and the anti-war movement in Britain, we would not be in the disaster that we are in today. Senator, this is the mother of all smokescreens. You are trying to divert attention from the crimes that you supported, from the theft of billions of dollars of Iraq's wealth. Have a look at the real oil for food scandal. Have a look at the 14 months you were in charge of Baghdad, the first 14 months, when $8.8 billion of Iraq's wealth went missing on your watch. Have a look at Halliburton and the other American corporations that stole not only Iraq's money, but the money of the American taxpayer. Have a look at the oil that you didn't even meter, that you were shipping out of the country and selling, the proceeds of which went who knows where. Have a look at the $800 million you gave to American military commanders to hand out around the country without even counting it or weighing it. Have a look at the real scandal breaking in the newspapers today. revealed in the earlier testimony that the biggest sanctions busters were not me or Russian politicians or French politicians. The real sanctions busters were your own companies with the connivance of your own government.
All right, that was Galloway addressing the U.S. Senate on the 17th. And wow, that just really goes to show, if there's one thing that really proves, it's what a bunch of slimy, good-for-nothing weasels the Democrats are. I mean, nobody expects the Republicans to stop murdering people and stealing and breaking every one of the Ten Commandments at every possible opportunity. But the Democrats supposedly are the opposition here. What Democrat in the U.S. Senate have you ever heard speak that way? The U.S. Senate that just passed the Real ID Act 100-0. We have to import the Brits to come over here to tell it straight. And better, you know, if you remember back before the war, we had to bring Tony Blair over here to give the speech to justify the war. Remember that? Everyone was talking about, well, George Bush is too stupid to say it right, but that Tony Blair, he's really convincing. Yeah, now we have to have the war. Isn't that great? The British Prime Minister has to come to convince us because Bush is too stupid to even convince us of his lies. And then we have to rely on Blair's enemy to come over here to help set it straight 2.5 years later. And only because they're falsely accusing him of corruption when he's won. See, the whole deal. But you ought to go listen to the whole audio, or in fact, go get the Real Player video of it on the internet and watch the whole thing. The Telegraph had written this article accusing him of taking all these kickbacks from the oil for food scandal and what have you, and he had disproven all of it, and in fact won a libel suit against them in Great Britain on all the same evidence that the U.S. Senate was accusing him of. So it's really pathetic, but apparently they just really didn't know what they were getting into inviting this guy to the Senate. Most people, when under this kind of attack, would crawl up in a little ball and send their lawyer out. Well, this guy, Galloway, isn't taking any guff at all. And I sure am happy to see that somebody has the guts to speak that way to the U.S. Senate, which we really need a new name for it, because it is no longer the U.S. Senate. It is purely the advisory commission that has no real power except to rubber stamp what the American emperor has already decided. It's not the U.S. Senate. I don't even think that they're justified in referring to themselves as senators anymore. They're not the Senate of anything. They're just the imperial rubber stamp, and they make me sick. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. 100-0. Really, the Real ID Act, 100-0. They put it in an appropriations bill from Iraq. Oh, you're not for the Real ID Act? Well, you just want our National Guardsmen to get blown up then. Yeah, okay. That's the way they pull it, and it worked. Imagine that, unanimous in the U.S. Senate. Not one senator thought, wow, a national ID card, I think that's going a bit too far. You just cost my vote. It's okay, you got 99 other votes. No problem, right? No, every single one of them fell into line. Every single one of them. In the U.S. of A., the land of the free and the home of the brave, where politicians run screaming like frightened little weasels at the slightest mention of a off-course Cessna private plane, a single prop. They all scurry in cowardly terror like little children, and then they turn right around and sing "Home of the Brave" at the top of their lungs with no sense of irony whatsoever. Isn't that awesome? I love America. The America rules, and that's why we're coming to your country to kill you and your family soon. Speaking of Americans killing people, and or at least helping local murderers kill people, we got to talk about Karimov in Uzbekistan. According to the Scotsman, up to 1,000, where Karimov, our wonderful ally who allows us to have military bases in Uzbekistan, what happened was he arrested 23 businessmen who are basically the lifeblood of this entire region, and the people weren't putting up with it, so they went and sprung them from jail. They threw a big protest, basically to be the diversion, I suppose, and then they sprung the 23 businessmen from jail. And the Uzbekistan government responded by, quote, shooting us like rabbits, as they slaughtered 1,000 civilians. And this just goes to show how consistent George Bush's policy of freedom and democracy is. If you're in Kyrgyzstan and the people don't like you, why they get millions of dollars to overthrow you in an instant. But if you're our loyal ally, Karmarov, who likes to boil his opponents alive, really, type in Karmarov, boil, and go look at the 5,000 different sources that prove that not only do they boil people alive, but one guy even had his mother thrown in prison for protesting that they boiled her son to death. So, anyway, that's our loyal ally in the war on terror, and that's because private terror is bad and state terror is good. And this is the Weekend Interview Show. We'll be right back. Oh, by the way, you want to read about Uzbekistan, go to antiwar.com. Ramondo's written 3 columns in a row about it. All right, we'll be right back.